So we still don't have real certainties on what happened with the Charlie Kirk assassination. We have what the FBI is telling us. We have people expressing their concerns, their opinions, their theories, their ideas, their possibilities in what could happen. We have had our own here on this channel. I have already expressed my concern of why I don't believe the FBI narrative. And it turns out a lot of people are having the same concerns with the official story that is being presented by the State Department, by the FBI, by Kash Patel. And this is left to people to just accept. I think we can all now kind of finally admit that we don't have an actual, guarantee on who exactly did this and why exactly this happened. We can only go into, different theories, different assumptions, different ideas, because even with the evidence that was being presented by Kash Patel, did not lead up to really anything, certain or anything guaranteed that was the case, that was the lead of this case. And not only do people like me don't believe the official narrative, I've already expressed in detail, why I don't believe the FBI and Kash Patel, but even people at the Charlie Kirk Memorial had concerns, and they were even saying that they don't believe the official narrative. So here's just some coverage of this. This is some commentators that I guess were, doing play-by-play of the memorial service at the State Farm Arena in Arizona, and Steve Bannon was part of this. And listen to what the commentators are saying, because these are, you have an entire stadium full of Charlie Kirk supporters, fans of TPUSA, very predominantly, Christian conservatives. And they're even expressing to the commentators that they don't believe the narrative that's being presented to them, that a 22-year-old, left-wing kind of transgender lunatic or this transgender death cult, this narrative is not sticking to them. So here's what they had to say.
So I was in line with people for 3 hours talking to all the folks, and they were Christians, and they were happy, and they had families, and they were lovely people. And I started talking to them, and they were happy and prayerful, and none of them that I spoke to believed that the shooter that they got and have arrested actually did it. And they are
the War Room Posse, it's 0%.
They were they were angry.
Same with our chat.
They don't need that. They don't, not saying this guy's not a bad guy and an evil guy.
Right.
But they think something, and this is why Kash Patel did announce today that the FBI has officially expanded the investigation. My big fear was you would get a lone wolf, lone gunman, and Utah police and everybody want to shut it down. I think Kash said today that they've expanded it out because we have to.
Forever.
So people at attendance of the Charlie Kirk Memorial, again, you're talking about predominantly Christian conservatives, fans of TPUSA, fans of Charlie Kirk's. They do not believe the narrative that some 22-year-old lone gunman was able to have the capacity to climb onto the roof with a highly powerful rifle and shoot at a distance that a military marksman can barely do and shoot down Charlie Kirk. They don't believe that official narrative. They're, sketchy about the whole thing. And they mentioned about Kash Patel releasing a statement, and here it is here. This was just shortly at roughly the same time as the memorial was going on. So Kash Patel says, as the director of the FBI, I am committed to ensuring the investigation into Charlie Kirk's assassination is thorough and exhaustive, pursuing every lead to its conclusion. The full weight of America's law enforcement agencies are actively following the evidence that has emerged, but our efforts extend beyond initial findings. We are examining every facet of this assassination. Now, that's very, very different compared to just a couple days ago, where it seemed like the FBI was trying to, shut this case immediately. That, we presented all the evidence we got. It's 22-year-old lone gunman. We have no, reason to suspect anybody else. We're not going to go in further investigation, yada, yada, yada. Here's the text chain. That doesn't really make sense. And that's what we're going with, and you just got to go with it. That's very different than what they said, just a couple days ago. And now here, Kash Patel, who originally tried to, shut down this case and immediately just say it was a 22-year-old. Now he's saying, wait a second, we're going to open this case back up again because no one's believing our story. No one's believing our story. People on social media are expressing concern about other possible inquiries that are being ignored by the FBI. Again, we have, further evidence to believe, suspicion that donors might be played into this, that, Charlie Kirk's stance on Israel. You look at previous videos that Charlie Kirk has stated, previous statements, you have to look into that. The video camera that was behind Charlie Kirk, we mentioned about how it was taken down and disassembled moments after Charlie Kirk was shot. That's kind of, suspicious that you're tampering with a crime scene. It just seems crazy to me. There's also suspicion of other people. There was also the guy with the hand gestures. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that need to be held to account. There's a lot of things. Again, we have no certainties on this. Anything's up in the air at this point because the evidence that we are being provided with by the FBI does not stick to the crowd because it is suspicious. It doesn't make sense. You putting two and two together, it doesn't add up to anything. And for them to try to elaborate on this idea that a 22-year-old that was able to climb the roof suspiciously with a rifle and shoot down Charlie Kirk and then disassemble the rifle, jump off the roof, leave the screwdriver on the roof, and then wrap up that same rifle assembled into a faraway distance. Like, none of it made sense. None of it made sense. And then they're also trying to bring in, left-wing ideology and the roommate that's transgender. Again, it made no sense. We are investigating theories and questions, including the location from where the shot was taken, the possibility of accomplices, the text message confession, and relayed conversations, Discord chats, the angle of the shot and bullet impact, how the weapon was transported, hand gestures observed as potential signals near Charlie at the time of his assassination, and visitors to the alleged shooter's residence in the hours and days leading up to September 10, 2025. Some details are known today, while others are still being pursued to ensure every possibility is considered. Our primary focus is to complete this investigation and deliver justice. To protect the integrity of the investigation of subsequent prosecution, we cannot release every piece of information we had to the public right now. We will ensure every question is addressed at the appropriate moment. So I think that's why Kash Patel was trying to rush into closing this case and releasing, suspicious evidence that we can't even claim as proof, like that note that mysteriously vanished, but they were able to bring back using FBI forensic science. Like, they were trying to do this to make it a shut case, to say that, well, the FBI did its job. We don't want, people to start questioning the FBI. We don't want people to start thinking that Kash Patel was trying to botch this investigation. And it's not a great time for this kind of incident to happen to the Trump administration, considering the fact that the Trump administration, we're not even a year in to this second term. And a lot of the promises, a lot of the campaign, the momentum, the mandates that people were voting in for Donald Trump is not playing out in what's happening right now. We were told that they were going to release the Epstein files, that they were going to investigate that. That's not being released. They were telling us that they were going to wrap up the Ukraine war. That's not happening. They were going to wrap up the war with the Gaza genocide. Obviously, that's not happening. And even, domestically, when they're telling people, we're going after the illegals that are committing crimes. Well, that's not the case either, because when you look further in the investigation, they're pulling people out of Walmarts and Home Depots. So a lot of the stuff that Trump and his team have been promising has been falling short. So I think Kash Patel wanted to wrap this up quickly as some sort of win, so that people won't be looking into his suspicion and, try to discredit the FBI. Even though the FBI is already discredited, I've already stated in detail why I don't believe a word of the FBI. Regarding specific details such as questions about the plane that allegedly turned off its transponder after departing from an airport near the assassination site, we could share updates when answers are confirmed. After interviews with the pilot and consultation with the FAA, we determined the transponder was not turned off. Incomplete flight data in rural areas caused the apparent gap. The entire FBI mourns the loss of Charlie Kirk. We will not rest until justice is served, and our investigation into his assassination will continue until every question is answered. So that is from Kash Patel, the statement that got released, because no one's believing his narrative. No one's believing the official story. Not even people attending the memorial service for Charlie Kirk. So you have now fans of Charlie Kirk that aren't believing this. You have people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and other podcasters, other YouTubers. Kim Iverson's another great one, that are investigating this deeply. So there's a lot of people that don't believe this story. They don't believe that it was a lone gunman. They don't believe that a 22-year-old kid, basically, even though he's a grown adult, he's practically a child when you're 22 years old, was able to climb the roof of said university, climb the roof at a far distance, and take a huge shot, a lethal shot, at a very long distance that a military marksman can't even perform, and was able to run away, was able to disassemble, reassemble, leaving the screwdriver on the roof. Again, there's so many flaws to this story that a lot of people with just basic common sense are putting two and two together and realizing that this is not adding up. Like, you're putting a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't make sense. So that's where this story from Fox News comes in. And this is even more wild, ladies and gentlemen. So Fox News is reporting, Man of Steel. Charlie Kirk's body stopped a bullet that would typically just go through everything, and it was an absolute miracle. No one else was killed. His surgeon told Turning Point USA. A miracle. A miracle. Just like how JFK was shot by the magic bullet. Remember that magic air, dynamics, that the bullet came down this way, but somehow went this way and magically turned course. It defies all laws of physics and science, but hey, it was a miracle. A miracle. And that's according, Fox News is publishing that. But where they're getting the source from? Well, they're getting it from this guy. This guy, Andrew Colvett, who is not only a chairman for Turning Point USA, he's a spokesperson for Turning Point USA, but he's also the producer of Charlie Kirk's podcast show. And he made this statement that's getting a lot of attention. He says, I want to address some of the discussion about the lack of an exit wound with Charlie, because a lot of people are asking that. Like, if it was a high-power rifle, a 30-06 bullet going through and hitting him in the throat in this direction, that normally there would be an exit wound. A lot of people have stated that. I'm no expert on ballistics. I'm what they call rifle illiterate in some ways, but I've seen, military personnel, I've seen gun enthusiasts have expressed detail about it. There would be an exit wound from that power, from that kind of caliber of a rifle. But this is what he's saying. I'm usually not interested in delving into most of this kind of online chatter, and I apologize that this is somewhat graphic, but in this case, the fact that there wasn't an exit wound is probably another miracle, and I want people to know. I just spoke with the surgeon who worked on Charlie in the hospital. He said the bullet absolutely should have gone through, which is very normal for a high-powered, high-velocity round. I've seen wounds from this caliber many times, and they've always just go through everything. This would have taken a moose or two down, an elk, etc. But it did not go through. Charlie's body stopped it. I mentioned to his doctor that there was dozens of staff, students, and special guests standing directly behind Charlie on the other side of the tent, and he replied, "It was an absolute miracle that someone else didn't get killed." It was a miracle. Again, just like how we were told that it was a miracle that Donald Trump, when Butler, Pennsylvania happened, just miraculously at the same time, shots were being fired seconds before, literally milliseconds before, he turns in the opposite direction. So instead of that bullet aiming for his head, it kind of went in this direction and got the clip of his ear. Which some people have gone into suspicions about that. Again, that's another investigation that seems botched and we don't know further evidence about. They're not going to tell us the full information. We know that there's a cover-up. We know that there's suspicions to that. And it just seems like we're just repeating this over and over and over again. But they're saying it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Why are you asking questions? It's a miracle. His bone was so healthy. This is what he said. His bone is so healthy, and the density was so impressive that he's like a man of steel. It should have just gone through and through. It likely would have killed those standing behind him, too. In the end, the coroner did find the bullet just beneath the skin. Even in damage, Charlie managed to save the lives of those around him. So, I just want to reiterate, I am not a ballistics expert. I am not a gun enthusiast. I'm almost kind of rifle illiterate on this kind of subject. But I know when something's fishy when I hear this kind of story, that the trajectory of the bullet. So you're telling me, if you want to believe the 22-year-old story, you want to believe the official narrative, you're telling me that the trajectory of the bullet that came from a far distance coming this way at such a rapid pace, even the doctor is saying that this is a high-powered, high-velocity round that could take down elk, that could take down a moose, that could take down a grizzly bear. So you're telling me at that distance, the bullet going through here at a high velocity, cutting through his throat, just left the bullet within his skin because he has bones of steel? And yet at the same time, they're telling us that they found the bullet, that there was an exit wound. So I don't know what to believe at this point, but you have this Turning Point USA spokesperson and producer of Charlie Kirk's podcast apparently stating that he talked to the doctor, he talked to the coroner, and he is just telling everyone to believe it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Stop asking questions. Stop looking at things. Don't ask about the exit wound. It's just a miracle. It was God's gift that Charlie Kirk could have, had his head torn off, and God prevented that. Well, if we're going to talk about miracles, why was there not a miracle that made, Charlie Kirk duck down right as the bullet was coming at him? Like, why isn't that the miracle? Or maybe he, talked to somebody else and turned in this direction. Like, why isn't that the miracle? Or why isn't the miracle that someone caught the 22-year-old before he took fire? Like, if we're going to be going down that rabbit hole, there's so many things wrong with this. There's so many things wrong with this. And when someone uses the term miracle and wants you to shut up about something, it reminds me that just 5 years ago, less than 5 years ago, actually, when all these supposed experts, remember we were talking about COVID and people were getting suspicious about where this came from. You know, was it man-made? Where this virus originated? It doesn't seem organic. And the so-called experts were telling us, do not ask these questions. Do not be concerned. Just understand we're in a pandemic and go with the flow. You're not allowed to ask where the virus came from. Just like how here, this man, his producer is telling us, hey, don't ask about the exit wound. Don't ask about the impact. Don't ask about the trajectory of the bullet. Just accept the fact that it's a miracle. It seems so crazy. It seems so crazy. And it's even more crazy. This is coming from the producer of Charlie Kirk. So someone who works directly with Charlie Kirk is just making this assumption. It's a miracle. Okay? It's a miracle. Shut up. Don't mention anything about it. It's a miracle, folks. So a lot of people have commented on this. Here's Kit Claringberg, a fantastic journalist who works at Grey Zone. He was the one that got detained in the UK for speaking about critically about Ukraine and Israel and whatnot. He's great on foreign affairs. He says, breaking, there was no exit wound behind Charlie Kirk because his bone density was so impressive. He's like a man of steel. Well, that's got me convinced. Yeah, it's a miracle that a bullet that could take down a grizzly bear, that hunters, military marksmen, ex-Green Berets that I've seen comment about this, saying how impossible it would be for Charlie Kirk to be shot down by a 22-year-old that distance. Yeah, it's just a miracle that, this man had the bone density like Superman, and that Fox News is going with this. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing and almost insulting to Charlie Kirk and his family for just stating this. Like, oh, it's a miracle that, we're not going to further investigate or analyze what actually happened with him. It's so crazy. And here's this guy, Genghis Khan. He says, this is the best yet. Apparently, Charlie Kirk's body has the same rating as a level 4 steel or ceramic bulletproof plate rating and stopped the 30-06 round, which has a direct hit on his throat. Then suddenly and miraculously found the bullets. So, the FBI is telling us they found the bullets. But you're telling me the coroner and the doctor treating Charlie Kirk is saying, no, we actually had the bullets. It was just under because his bone density was almost bulletproof. We don't even know what to believe at this point. We don't know what to believe at this point. And the more that we're seeing these individuals, especially people within Charlie Kirk's circle, and Candace Owens even stated this, that we got to be aware of certain infiltrators and insiders within Turning Point USA and their statements, because there was tension. There was tension. Again, let's not forget that prior to Charlie Kirk's assassination, there was tension between the donors of Turning Point USA, the staff of Turning Point USA, that people were getting a little bit, suspicious that, when Charlie Kirk was trying to express his concern about Israel, express his concern about, Trump going to war with Iran, how that was kind of rocking the boat. We can't leave that out. We can't leave that out. We can't leave those suspicions out because that is providing context to the possible motive of this. I'm not saying that Israel committed the assassination. I'm not saying Benjamin Netanyahu ordered a hit on Charlie Kirk using a Mossad agent. I'm not suggesting that. But we have to bring this context in the investigation, the possible motive that someone did this. That maybe, possibly, there could be a pro-Israel nutcase out there. That maybe Bill Ackman or one of the billionaires had someone trying to target Charlie Kirk because, powerful business interests that, fund Turning Point USA or want to steer the direction because they know they're losing the narrative control of people's favorability of Israel that's tanking, especially with the younger demographic. And this is going to be the future of the Republicans, which Charlie Kirk was a very influential man. That's troublesome. And the billionaire interests, the pro-Israel, supporters or the extremists that are, very clenched to the Zionist prophecy could potentially have that motivation to go after someone like Charlie Kirk. And that's why we bring it to detail. It's not because of anti-Semitism or we just want to, escape and blame the Jews for something. No, absolutely not. It's determining the motivation. Because even as I stated, if we were to believe that this was caused by some lefty lunatic, some sort of transgender enthusiast, why did they specifically pick September 10th in Utah, of all places, to assassinate Charlie Kirk? And Charlie Kirk, I disagree with stuff that he says, and we're allowed to, agree and disagree with people, but Charlie Kirk was fairly moderate when it comes to disagreements of lefty policies or things he disagrees with the right wing. He was fairly moderate. So it gives me the assumption that, okay, if it was a left-wing lunatic that wanted to silence out conservative voices, why have all people picked Charlie Kirk? It doesn't make sense to me. Like, Charlie Kirk is not the predominant figure that is spreading this hatred, but he is a highly influential person that could change the narrative, especially for a party that the older generation specifically had their agenda, and the younger generation don't believe that agenda. They're very much anti-war. They're for free speech, that they don't respect, Netanyahu's regime and the Israeli genocide towards Gaza. So that's why we look into that. That's why that's so important to bring that to the conversation, because this could possibly lead up to the motive. And here's also this. So this is Stu Peters, and he's showing this video. So a man with a 30-06 is testing the velocity of firing a bullet at the range of 150 yards to a watermelon. And a lot of people are sharing this video because if we're to believe that that was the rifle in use, that this 30-06 rifle was the weapon used in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, then how Charlie Kirk died and the impact of him getting shot in the throat, which you can look for yourselves, viewer discretion advised. I'm not encouraging people because it's very gruesome and gory, but if you look at the footage, it's very, 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 it doesn't line up when you see people using that same rifle and the impact it has on other, other means, like a watermelon here. So let's just take a look at this, for instance.
Can't tell what's watermelon and what's brain blood.
Right out the back. Yep. Completely unstopped, straight through.
Filled the whole frame.
You can see the bullet go straight through.
I didn't care.
The watermelon didn't know it.
So what they're trying to prove here with this video is the fact that this is a highly powered rifle. This is a highly powered gun that the bullet would easily make an exit wound. So now there's suspicion that this 30-06 rifle that they found miraculously put together under cloth and in a box in the forest somewhere that supposedly got assembled, disassembled, and then reassembled again without a screwdriver because the screwdriver supposedly was still on the roof, may not be the actual gun that was used to shoot down Charlie Kirk. And there's very, very possibility that could be the case. Because a lot of people, again, I'm not a ballistic expert. I'm not, into understanding or acknowledging, all these different rifles and guns and weaponry like that. But you look at, former military marksmen. You look at gun enthusiasts. You look at people that understand the velocity, the power, the range. None of it is adding up to this story. None of it's connecting. And you just saw there the impact of a watermelon that it easily would have caused an exit wound. It easily would have caused damage. And even with Charlie Kirk being shot, the impact, if the shooter was in far distance over here and Charlie Kirk is here, the shot being carried out this way, that would mean his body would go backwards. His body would go backwards. The blood would be pouring out backwards. We would see blood splatter across the back of Charlie Kirk, not the side, which is also raising suspicion about the fact that this possibly could not be a shooter from that distance, from across the way, but could be nearby. So there's a lot to be said about this, folks. A lot to be said. Here's Alex Jones commenting on this. And it's funny because Alex Jones, I feel like day by day, he has a whole different script. Like day by day, it's a whole different paradigm. Like first he didn't agree with the FBI narrative. He said it was very suspect. And then by the next day, he says that the FBI is legit. We're blaming, transgender ideology and leftist lunatics and whatnot. And then he disagrees with it again. But then he goes on board the next day. And then further on, like, you don't know exactly what he's talking about or what he believes. And I think he's just trying to test the waters to see what sticks. Like, I don't think he has any presumption or any principle to even accurately determine this investigation. He's just trying to go with the flow and see what sticks and see what his viewers agree with. And Alex Jones, who we're going to show this video here, saying new details of why the 30-06 bullet did not pass all the way through Kirk's neck revealed, according to the surgeon who examined Kirk's body. Now, what's funny is prior to this video, Alex Jones stated that he didn't believe this. That he was saying breaking, Turning Point USA stated that it did not pass. There was no exit wound because Charlie Kirk's body is a man of steel. And as someone that hunts and shoots things for as a hobby, I don't believe that because the impact of the bullet obviously would have caused, at that high velocity, would obviously cause an impact wound. It would have caused a exit wound. And for them to say that there is no bullet, but there is a bullet, it doesn't make sense to me. He said that prior. And now, watch as the next day, after he just said he doesn't believe it because he goes and shoots and hunts for a living, for, just for sport. Now he has a different tone because he had a phone call. He had a phone call with Jack Posobiec and the producer of Charlie Kirk's podcast show, the guy who revealed this miracle. And watch how he changes his tone immediately with this.
Jack Posobiec, and he says, yeah, we see your viral post from an hour ago where you're quoting the TPUSA spokesperson, who, by the way, is a big fan of yours. You've met him, you've hung out with him, had dinner with him, Andrew Colvin, where he's quoting the surgeon that attended to Charlie when he was brought in. And he didn't want to give the details out, so I understand how it looks a little weird that the bullet didn't go through. You need to call him. So I call him and he goes, listen, I don't want to give the details out. I said, well, I can't help it if I'm explaining. He goes, okay, fine, but it's really gruesome. And he said that, again, he's being shot from down an angle. It hits the spine and then bounces down, which is what it's going down. And then it deflects with his velocity, goes back into the spine, blows out 6 vertebrae. The bullet then shatters. That's what they do. I've shot wild hogs straight on. This has happened, and deer, and then exploded into the heart, and fragments shot up. So he oversimplified when he said, oh, then they found the bullet up in the shoulder by the neck. No, it was fragments. And I'm sitting there listening to this.
But that's not what the surgeon said. That's not what the surgeon said. It's not fragments. They said they found the bullet. At the same time, the FBI is saying they found a bullet, and there was an exit wound. So none of this is adding up. None of this is adding up. So many people going to the suspicion because we know that the official narrative has, officially pretty much gone cold, that no one believes it. Everyone's suspicious about it. We know the FBI has constantly lied to us before, so why are we going to believe, this kind of rhetoric? And now people are jumping to these wild accusations because, the producer of Charlie Kirk's podcast talked to the surgeon and is telling people what the surgeon told him. So you're interpreting what the surgeon supposedly told Andrew, that Andrew is now telling people that places like Fox News and Alex Jones is just going with uncritically. And the thing that doesn't make sense to me is that if this was the case, why wouldn't the hospital or that surgeon release a statement about it himself? Why would you not release a medical record or the transcript or anything coming from that hospital that directly states this is what happened? We have not found an exit wound. That we do believe that we have found, fragments of this bullet and not the actual why wouldn't the hospital just release that information? And why are we hearing this from a Turning Point USA spokesperson interpreting what he heard from the surgeon? Because how do we know this man is correct? That he's not lying, that he's not involved in this somehow, that the fact that he's saying that this is a miracle. Just like how the people during COVID told us to trust the science. Don't question things. Don't research. Don't look into things. Just trust the science. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. With that insane logic, you might as well believe that Charlie Kirk isn't even dead. That maybe he's on paddle boating down the Mississippi River somewhere. Or maybe Charlie Kirk killed him, shot himself. If we're going to go down that road, if we're going to go down that rabbit hole without any critical thought, without any awareness of the situation, without any sort of common sense, and just to believe that's a miracle, then why do we believe that Charlie Kirk died in this incident? Again, it just does not make any sense. Does not make any sense. And it doesn't even make sense that Alex Jones, his previous statement, as they showed the video, it was him in his car talking about it doesn't make sense because I go out hunting all the time and I shoot, wild boar and stuff. And it doesn't make sense that this bullet could, ricochet off and do the stuff that Turning Point USA is claiming. But, because you got a phone call from Jack Posobiec, now you believe it. Again, none of this makes sense. None of this makes sense. We can only, based on, assumptions and conclusions that we can describe in detail. Here's also something else I want to point out. So Taylor Hanson has drone footage of the university campus. This was prior to when Charlie Kirk got assassinated. So this was like the morning of, where a drone was being flown over the college campus. And we're expected to believe, let's just show people in the background this. So here, you can see there's Charlie Kirk's tent off in the distance. You can see on the right. I don't know if you can see the pointer. So there's Charlie Kirk's tent in the distance. There's all the people in the courtyard. And you're telling me, hold on, let's fast forward this a bit. And you're supposed to tell me that the shooter was all the way at this building. So you're telling me that the shooter had to climb up to the roof of this building, fire a shot that went over another building, because you can see this building here, this one right here, is in front of the shooter. So you have to go over two buildings to accurately shoot down a lethal shot that killed Charlie Kirk from that distance. And like I said, I'm no expert on this, but you would assume if a bullet came impact this way, that you would be falling backwards, that the blood would be coming down this way. It'd be going backwards. There'd be, bloodshed at the back of the tent there. But that's not what we saw. We saw the blood pouring out this way, which many have speculated and many have gone into detail and made some conclusions that possibly the bullet did not come from straight across the way, that possibly there might be other shooters in the vicinity close by to Charlie Kirk that shot in that direction. So here's just a map, too, of the breakdown of this. So there at the far right is where they suppose that Tyler Robinson climbed up and took his shot. So you can see he's going over this main building here at this distance. I don't know how tall the buildings are, but you're telling me that this 22-year-old took a shot over this building, accurately shooting down Charlie Kirk. That's 455 feet, or roughly over 200 yards away. A direct shot. But what people are saying, and you can go look for this for yourself, there's many accounts that are investigating this, that maybe the shot wasn't from here, but it could have been from a nearby building. So you could see behind Charlie Kirk's tent, I don't know if people could see it, I make it a bit bigger, but you could see next to Charlie Kirk's tent, where the setup was, there's this little Hall of Flags area, this building here. And some have stated that there could have been a shot taken from somewhere in that building or somewhere in that crowd, because the impact of where Charlie Kirk got shot and how he was bleeding out, it seems like the trajectory of the bullet did not come straight across like this, that it more came like this at an angle. So someone to Charlie Kirk's right may have taken that shot and hit him directly that way, considering the fact the blood was pouring down this way and he fell towards his left side. That there's a possibility that could have happened. So that's my take of this. Again, we don't know for sure about any of this, that this is going to be a long investigation. And I think that this is intentionally why they're making this such a long investigation, is because they don't want people to know the truth about this. Just like how they don't want people to know the exact details about Butler, Pennsylvania, or the second Trump assassinator, or, the Vegas shooter, or any of the school shooters. And I do find it funny, as they're mentioning about left-wing lunatics and transgender and this transgender death cult, that you remember prior to this assassination, there was a school shooting in Minnesota. We covered it on this channel, that there was a school shooting in Minnesota at a Christian Bible school in Minnesota. And the suspect was a transgender person. That case was very suspective, because as they were giving details about this transgender person, they were listing off a bunch of bullet points that seems like it'd be the perfect match for a patsy for everything that they want to deem, someone as anti-government or anti-American, or try to demonize someone as the perfect, bad guy against the Trump administration. And that never went to full details about that. They said that there was casings that had, free Palestine on it. There was casings that said, anti-Trump rhetoric. There was casings that's, talked about, anti-Ukraine. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that seems suspicious. That seems convenient, considering the fact the Trump administration wants to crack down on anyone that's, contradicting Israel, contradicting Ukraine, contradicting their administration, and is cracking down currently right now on free speech, which is another failure of the Trump administration. They claim that, free speech is back, that we're going to cancel out the wokeness and DEI. But yet here we are having Pam Bondi and Caroline Leavitt, and even Trump himself, announcing that they're going to crack down on people for considerable hate speech. That's something that the left done, under Joe Biden, and conservatives complained about, and conservatives were worried about, and they were angry about it, and I was angry about it, that this is coming from the left. Like, how crazy, how authoritarian the Joe Biden administration gotten, and now Trump, who is a polar opposite of Joe Biden, is doing the exact same thing. So, again, we're living in such deranged times, ladies and gentlemen. So all I could say, I know I've been talking extensively about this, but all I can say is I don't believe the official narrative, not one bit. And apparently a lot of people don't. And the only thing we can do, the saving grace of this investigation, is the fact that we still have free speech. We still have the ability to communicate with each other. And I think it's important that we share and discuss openly about the possibilities. And you don't have to agree. You don't have to accept the conclusions that people are making. You don't have to agree or be favorable to someone like Candace Owens. But the reason I'm inclined to believe someone like Candace or Kim Iverson or come to my own assumptions is because the fact that I'm willing to look and research and provide evidence and facts and provide receipts that draw me to that suspicion, draw me to that conclusion. When Max Blumenthal put those articles out about Charlie Kirk's donors, that made me that kind of, accepted my argument that Charlie Kirk may have had some people behind his back that were plotting against him, that the donor class was kind of a bit freaked out, that Charlie Kirk was rocking the boat. They didn't like the fact that he had Tucker Carlson, Dave Smith at Turning Point USA, and possibly, we're not sure, we're not certain about this, but that might be a possible motive for someone to do, that they didn't like Charlie Kirk platforming people that were critical of Israel, people that are critical about the war machine, people that are critical about so much stuff. And like I said, I'm not directly blaming Israel for this. I'm saying that that's a possible motive for someone to do that. I'm not saying Netanyahu did it himself, but I'm saying that's a possible motive for someone to gun down Charlie Kirk. Because I don't believe that a left-wing lunatic, as I stated before, Charlie Kirk has been doing this for a long time now. He's been going to college campuses all across America in blue states and red states. So why would a left-wing lunatic decide Utah on September 10th, 2025 to gun him down? Out of all people. There's far worse, I can think of far worse people that are more anti-trans or anti-LGBTQ or very hateful for the left compared to Charlie Kirk. Like, it didn't make sense to me then. It doesn't make sense to me now. And I just feel like it's going to be another instance where we're going to have all these assumptions and suspicions, and it's just going to go on forever, just like JFK, just like, 9/11. Like, we're never going to know the official truth, and I think that's kind of the point. We're never going to know about these things, because if we actually know about these things, then, and if the government is involved in somehow, or there is some sort of cover-up, then, people might go to the streets and get angered and get riled up. But it's easier for the establishment to make these weird assumptions, to pin it against some group or some organized collection of people, and get people angry at each other. The establishment thrives on chaos. And that's what they're trying to project more and more of each and every day. But luckily for us, while we still have free speech, we're not going to be silent about this. We're not going to shut up, and we're going to keep on looking at the evidence and figuring out for ourselves the conclusion of this investigation, if we can.